Let's dive in. The Everest Base Camp trek. It's one of those big ones, isn't it? A real bucket list item for so many people.
Absolutely. That image of standing there, Everest towering above you, it's powerful. A mix of adventure, challenge, culture.
Yeah, the whole Sherpa culture, the Himalayas. It's iconic.
Yeah.
But the usual picture, it involves, basic tea houses, dull bat,
hmm
maybe bracing yourself for a cold shower.
That's the traditional experience, certainly. Part of the charm, you could say, facing the elements.
Right. So when this article popped up in The Independent back in May 2025, was the title, Flat Whites and Underfloor Heating, How I Got to Everest Base Camp in Complete Comfort. It definitely caught our eye.
It paints a very different picture, doesn't it? Suggests a level of, well, luxury that you just don't normally associate with high-altitude trekking in the Khumbu.
Exactly. And the price tag attached.
And we'll get to that. So that's our mission today. We're digging into the sources you provided, especially the really detailed articles on EVC costs by Nepal guidebook author David Ways, from the Longest Way Home website. Yes, his stuff is incredibly thorough, ground-level perspective.
And we've got general EBC cost info for 2025-26, plus, of course, the Independent article itself. We want to figure out what's really going on, what does the trek involve, what are the actual costs, and is this super expensive comfort trek really what it claims to be?
Sounds good. We've got the claims from the article and then the facts and figures from someone who knows Nepal inside out, like David Ways. It should let us compare, the marketing spin versus the reality on the trail.
We'll take it seriously, look hard at those luxury claims, crunch the numbers, and hopefully give you a much clearer idea of what to expect if EBC's on your radar, maybe with a bit of reality check humor along the way.
Let's start with that Independent article's big claim the price. What was it again?
Get this, $11,875 per person for a 14-day group trek. That converts to roughly $15,000 US.
$15,000 per person. Okay, that's
Yeah.
quite something. That's the figure we need to unpack.
For a group trek, remember. And they justify it with things like hot showers and underfloor heating. How does that stack up against the reality our sources describe?
Well, let's say it's partially true, but only up to a point. Hot showers, yes, you can find them lower down, like in Namche Bazaar, maybe even up to Dingbosch.
Oh,
But they almost always cost extra. You're paying like 200 to 600 rupees each time. And the key thing is, once you get higher, past maybe 4,400 meters, they pretty much disappear.
so no hot showers near base camp itself.
Not really, no. Our sources are clear. Gorak Shep, the last stop before EBC, you're looking at maybe an icy bucket wash, if anything. Hot showers are a lower altitude comfort, not a high altitude guarantee, regardless of price.
Okay, so strike widespread hot showers off the luxury list. What about the underfloor heating claim?
Again, context is everything. The sources mention underfloor heating exists, but mainly in some of the newer, fancier lodges in Namche Bazaar. It's a standard feature there for some places.
Not some special feature laid on just for this expensive package high up the trail.
Exactly. It's not an exclusive high-altitude luxury. And private bathrooms. Sources say they're generally not available past places like Parush or Bingbosch. The higher you go, the more basic the facilities become for everyone.
Right, the mountain kind of dictates terms, doesn't it?
hmm
Okay, next claim. Flat whites and fancy coffee. They mentioned baristas in Namche.
Yeah, and again, Namche Bazaar has had decent cafes selling espressos, lattes, even flat whites for years now. It's a relatively developed hub.
So you could just walk in and buy one.
Pretty much. Costs maybe $3 to $5. It's readily available to anyone trekking through Namche, not some perk tied to a $15,000 package.
So highlighting it as part of the luxury package is a bit misleading.
It feels like it. One source even laughs at the idea of baristas at base camp, suggesting you'd need porters just to haul the machines up there. Recommends an AeroPress if you really need good coffee high up.
Huh. Okay, practical advice there. What about the premium tents they mention at EVC for 2 nights?
David Ways' analysis basically calls these out as well. Overpriced sleeping bags. At base camp itself, accommodation is fundamentally basic. It's about shelter and warmth in an extreme environment. Premium tent sounds grander than the likely reality.
Okay, so the comfort claims are looking a bit shaky. Standard stuff presented as exclusive or limited to lower altitudes. But the Independent article also pushes the helicopter flights angle hard. 2 flights, 1 back down, giving flexibility.
Ah, yes, the helicopters. This is probably where a huge chunk of that $15,000 goes, but it's problematic.
How so?
Well, first, the cost. Sources say those flights are $1,000 to $2,000.
Each. Wow.
Yeah. Second, it fundamentally changes the trek. You skip the entire descent. Walking back down is half the journey, important for acclimatization, seeing things from a different perspective.
And the environmental impact.
That's a major concern raised in the sources. The noise, the potential avalanche risk from vibrations, trail damage, scaring yaks and wildlife. It's significant. There were even local attempts, mentioned in 2025, to ban or limit these flights to protect the environment and local tea house livelihoods. But apparently, the big tour companies push back hard. So using helicopters isn't standard, and it comes with a hefty environmental and experiential price tag.
So the flexibility comes at a massive cost, financially and maybe ethically, and makes it less of a traditional trek. Okay, let's put that $15,000 figure directly against the other costs our sources provide for 2025. How does it compare?
The comparison is stark. Let's take a genuinely private luxury trek, the kind David Weighs details. A 14-day private trip, high-end lodges where possible, your own guide and pace.
Okay, so truly premium private service. What's the ballpark cost for that?
Around $6,657. That's roughly 5,250 pounds.
Wait, hang on. $15,000 for the Independence Group trek versus about $6,600 for a private luxury trek.
Less than half the price, yes.
That's astounding. Less than half for a private trip.
It really puts the Independence price into perspective. And that $6,600 figure, based on the source breakdown, includes pretty much everything you'd expect for luxury. International flights estimate, $1,250. The Lukla flight, $430. Top-end accommodation available, $1,830. One helicopter flight back from EBC, $1,500. Private guide and porter, $1,008. Permits, $60. Meals, $504. Even a bit for extras, $75.
So for over $8,000 less, you get a personalized, high-comfort private trek.
Pretty much. Now compare that $15,000 to the standard EBC trek cost, how most people experience it.
Right, the tea house trek. What are we looking at there?
Dramatically lower. The sources suggest for a typical 12-day trek, if you hire a porter, it's around $1,677. That's about 1,320 pounds.
Under $1,700.
And even less if you carry your own pack, maybe $1,513, 1,190 pounds.
So, $15,000 versus less than $1,700. The Independence trek is nearly 10 times the price of a standard trek to the same destination.
Precisely. The standard cost covers your essentials. Permits, $60. Lukla flight, $430. Guide or porter, $624, $360. Basic tea house lodging, $60. Food, $432. Water options, $96 or less with filter. Basic extras, $75. Other sources confirm this range, putting local company packages around $1,600, $1,800. It's just a completely different financial universe.
Okay, the price difference is massive. But here's the kicker, right? What does that huge $15,000 price tag not actually cover?
This is where it gets really surprising, maybe even concerning. Based on the footnotes in the source analysis of that specific independent package, it excludes quite a few things you'd expect to pay for on the trail.
Like what?
Things like, well, those hot showers we mentioned earlier, where they exist, Wi-Fi access in lodges, charging your phone or power bank.
Even potentially the bus transfer from Ramachap if your Lukla flight gets diverted, which happens quite often.
Hold on. You pay $15,000, and you still have to fork out extra for a shower or to charge your devices. That's what the analysis indicates, yes. The sources estimate these excluded extras could add up to around $225 on top of the $15K. You know, a few hundred rupees here for a shower, a few hundred there for charging, maybe $20 for a data card. It adds up.
Wow. For that price, you'd expect truly all-inclusive. It feels a bit like you're being nickel and dimed even after paying a premium.
It does seem that way. But there's an even bigger, more critical exclusion mentioned in the sources.
What's that?
Trekking insurance. The sources explicitly state that the $15,000 price does not include proper trekking insurance.
No insurance. Why is that such a big deal for EBC?
It's absolutely vital. You need specialized insurance covering high-altitude trekking, specifically up to 6,000 meters for EBC and viewpoint climbs like Kalapathar. Your standard travel insurance almost certainly won't cover this.
And why the need for specialized cover?
Altitude sickness. AMS, acute mountain sickness, is a serious risk. It can come on quickly, and if it gets bad, you might need an emergency helicopter evacuation. Without the right insurance, that evacuation could cost you, well, tens of thousands of dollars out of pocket.
So you're paying a fortune for perceived comfort and safety, but you're not actually covered for the single biggest medical risk on the trek unless you buy separate, specialized insurance.
That's exactly what the sources suggest. It seems like a massive gap in a package marketed at such a high price point, potentially leaving trekkers financially exposed.
That really undermines the whole luxury, worry-free pitch, doesn't it? What else is excluded? Tips?
Tips are also extra, yes. The footnote analysis estimates around $150, $200 would be expected for the guide and porter team on a package like this, excluded from the main price.
Okay, so the $15,000 price is inflated. Excludes daily essentials, excludes critical safety insurance, and excludes tips. That really changes the value equation. Let's talk about the experience itself beyond just cost. Group trek versus private.
The sources touch on this. Standard group treks, not just the super expensive one, can sometimes be a bit inflexible. You're on a fixed schedule, maybe miss out on spontaneous cultural moments like a tea ceremony in a Sherpa home or exploring a side valley.
And you're stuck with the group pace.
Often, yes, dictated by the slowest hiker. And, group dynamics can sometimes be tricky over 2 weeks.
Makes sense. So how does a private trek, like that $6,600 luxury option, differ in experience?
Flexibility is the huge advantage. You set the pace with your guide. Want to start early to avoid crowds? Fine. Want to linger at a viewpoint? No problem. Take a detour to a monastery. Usually possible.
And the cultural connection.
It can be much deeper. A private guide has more time to share insights, stories about the mountains, Sherpa life. You can build a real rapport. Plus, booking with reputable local agencies ensures money stays within the community and costs are usually very clear up front.
Now, the independent article did claim their extensive trek offered the gift of time and flexibility.
They did, but they attributed it to their backup support and, crucially, those expensive helicopter rides, especially the ones skipping the descent.
So it's flexibility bought with a huge budget and by altering the trek rather than the organic flexibility you get from just having your own guide.
Exactly. It's a different kind of flexibility. And you have to ask if bypassing half the walk back down really enhances the core EBC experience. One source strongly argues the essence is the journey, the Sherpa hospitality, the raw power of Everest, not necessarily having coffee machines hauled up the mountain.
Right. The sources promoting standard or private local treks often mention things like eating del pot with locals or filtering your own water as ways to save money and connect more authentically.
Precisely. Those simple things become part of the adventure. While the independent piece mentioned some positive interactions, the overwhelming focus seemed to be on the manufactured comforts and the shortcuts, especially at higher altitudes where, frankly, conditions are basic for pretty much everyone.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. The key takeaway seems to be that this $15,000 luxury EBC trek from the independent, it's wildly overpriced compared to both genuinely private high-end options, which are closer to $6,600.
And vastly more expensive than standard, well-organized treks, which typically cost between $1,500 and $1,700.
Many of the so-called luxuries are either standard things available cheaper, lower down, not actually feasible higher up, or just not exclusive to that package.
Correct. And the big selling points like helicopters come with significant cost, environmental concerns, and arguably detract from the full trekking experience.
And the most crucial point, perhaps, that huge price excludes essentials like proper high-altitude trekking insurance, plus daily extras and tips.
Absolutely. It seems while the independent package might offer some comfort via its massive budget, especially with the helicopter assist, the sources strongly suggest a private trek booked locally offers far better value, more authentic flexibility, and a more complete experience for significantly less money without the environmental question marks of multiple helicopter flights. The high price just doesn't seem to translate into a proportionally better or fundamentally different experience on the ground, especially where it counts at altitude.
You could pay a fortune and still be paying for basics while missing out on the real heart of the trek.
That certainly seems to be the conclusion from comparing the sources.
So maybe the provocative thought for you, the listener, is this. When you're looking at adventure travel, especially something iconic like EBC, when does a high price tag actually buy you genuinely enhanced value that fits the spirit of the place? And when is it just selling, a perception, a convenience that might actually isolate you from the core experience or come with hidden costs, financial, environmental, or cultural?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or in this case, the $15,000 question. Understanding what you're truly paying for versus what you truly value in the experience is key.
Definitely. And if you are planning an EBC trek or any Nepal adventure and you want solid, independent info from someone who really knows the ropes, we absolutely recommend checking out the author whose work we relied on heavily today, David Weiss.
Yes, his website, The Longest Way Home Nepal Travel website, is just packed with practical, unbiased advice, invaluable for planning.
And look for his guidebooks, too, like First Time Trekking in Nepal or the big one, Trekking in Nepal. They give you realistic cost breakdowns, route details, cultural insights, everything you need to plan a trip that's right for you, whether that's budget, private luxury, or somewhere in between. Getting properly informed upfront is the best first step you can take.